The worst horror movie I ever saw was fucking great.
Hello and welcome to This May Hurt a Bit. My name is James Strayer and this is
John C. Myers.
And we're a horror franchise podcast discussing each film in popular and not so popular franchises. And today we're talking about Saw 3 from 2006. Greenlit, I think they said literally the weekend that Saw 2 came out and was in production just a couple days after the premiere of Part 2, which means they knew that they had a hit on their hands with Part 2 once again.
Yeah, basically. And Greg Hoffman, the producer that shepherded this whole thing through to begin with, passed away very young. I think he was only like 42. After Saw 2.
It's tough business.
Neither Darren Lynn Bossman or James Wan and Leigh Whannell wanted to do a third one. Mm-hmm. They were like, we're kind of done. I mean, James Wan and Leigh Whannell had no plans after one to make this whole franchise. But they're like, no, we kind of, we did the thing. But once that guy died, they got together and went, they're going to make a third one anyway.
Yes.
Why don't we, for him, let's get the band back together.
Mm-hmm.
And then they agreed to come together. And Leigh Whannell and James Wan did story by, but then Leigh Whannell did the script for the Big Boss Man directed.
Came back in. Yeah, I do not say this belittling the man's funeral, the man's life or contribution or anything, but it does really crack me up to think of these four dudes showing up to a funeral lunch or something like that and just being like, we got to do one more Saw movie for our buddy. Yeah. Like, I'm just like, but I'm sure that there is true emotion to that, but it just still kind of cracks me up because it's a Saw movie.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's almost like Jigsaw dying and you're like, well, we got to get together and put one more guy in an absurd contraption. That's what he would have wanted.
Yeah. I'd like to see that filmed very somberly at the diner or wherever. Everybody's in black suits and such, just all committing.
My one regret is that I never got to dump pig's goop on somebody.
let's make good on that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this one I felt did differentiate itself from the past two a little bit, just in the fact that once we finally get going, and that's my first kind of big issue with this movie, we are on a little bit more of a linear path with just a couple of characters and one kind of issue, one case, if you will. But the first 20 minutes of this is so odd with the pacing of the first two traps, because it's almost like we just had to get those two characters out of the way and then move forward. And I suppose, spoiler for the end, get across the idea that Amanda has been rigging these traps to not be solvable.
It picks up where the second one left off with Detective Matthews, Donnie Wahlberg waking up in the bathroom. And I'd read a couple of different things about this. There's one that said that they had to reconstruct the bathroom. And there's another one that says that Scary Movie 4 was had a Saw-type bathroom. And they're like, hey, could we use that?
I enjoy that
Which is pretty great.
Yeah.
So he's trapped in the same bathroom as before. He does the whole, looking around again. There's Adam's corpse. There's Carrie Ellis's foot. And I feel like I didn't say this last time, but I need to, as the elephant in the room, need to deal with this. As the head editor of Carrie Ellis's WikiFeet page.
Yes.
I do not accept that foot as an entry. That's not actually his foot. They didn't do any moldings of it. It doesn't count. Please stop sending me Carrie Ellis's foot. It's not going on the page.
Is that the only WikiFeet you're in charge of?
Just that one. In fact, I just started that page.
Oh.
And some freaks took over and built the whole site around it. I was trying to do something pure.
Something pure that was just Carrie Elway's foot. But then
it was just Carrie Elway's about his feet, his glorious feet.
So you're the Jigsaw in this situation where you had other followers come over and take your work in situations that you didn't expect.
And pervert it.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, much like Jigsaw, you are not into this. You just do it as a service.
I was testing the limits of human experience.
I'll post a link to John's work in the episode notes, and you guys can all go check it out after you listen to this. Yes.
Yeah. But it's Donnie Wahlberg doing the same thing again, and he's got it. He's in the same situation with his foot shackled up, and rather than use any of the items he finds to bust open a lock, including a empty pistol, the back of the toilet or whatever, trying to bust some lock. He just busts his foot and to try to slip it in there.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, is that better than just cutting it off? Because it's if you're trying to get I mean, obviously there's the blood issue, but in terms of like a reconstructive kind of thing,
Sure.
can they just sort of like lick it and stick it back on, or versus like, that's just a bag of bones you're hauling around?
That could be. I mean, how do you reconstruct? They'd have to open up the foot, I suppose, and reset all the bones. But yeah,
the $6 million foot.
Right. But yeah, sticking back on just seems like way easier because you don't have the internals.
But I don't know how it all works. I have a very sort of cartoon knowledge of anatomy.
Yeah, I hope any listeners in the medical field let us know which you would prefer.
Any podiatrists out there?
Yeah.
Because I don't think, either way it would suck.
Oh my God. Yeah.
But I probably bashing over cutting, but either way, no good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's in there doing that. And then there's another thing that happens elsewhere. Mm-hmm. And Detective Carrie, Dina Meyer, Dizzy from Starship Troopers gets called back in. Mm-hmm. This time it's got the same SWAT guy as last time.
Yep.
But a new character has arrived. And I only know that he's in more of them because I've seen, I think the next one. But Costas Mandalore as Detective Hoffman, named for Greg Hoffman.
Okay.
But it's also, you don't get a guy with a cooler name as Costas Mandalore.
And
have him do that little.
Yeah, so. Exactly.
But this trap is a dude. He was chained up to the walls and the floor and through different rings through his mouth, his jaw, his shoulders, his legs. And he had to remove them all and try to defuse this nail bomb before it went off, because Jigsaw's big issue was that he was in jail a bunch.
For some reason.
Was what I got out of it.
Yeah.
He's just like, you're in jail too much, so you got to break the chains that bind you.
Yeah, I did read up on this trap a little bit, and originally, as with these things, before you go into an actual production, they're a little bit more graphic because your imagination doesn't have to worry about logistics at all.
Right.
But they wanted to put one of these rings through his teeth and make it so he had to pull one of his own teeth out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that made me think, oh, I remember the poster when this one came out. It was Saw 3, and it was just 3 teeth.
Oh, right, yeah.
As the 1, 2, 3. And so that's a great case of where a marketing department just has to hit the ground running on their schedule, not knowing how you're going to make things different in the film. Regardless, this was a gnarly trap. But yeah, one of them was he was supposed to pull out his tooth, and then I believe his fingertip under his fingernail or something like that. But
that is very gnarly.
This one it was definitely enough because you do get to see him tear the rings out of his skin. And it's extremely Hellraiser, not just the rings and the skin, but also it's so much of the Cenobites ideas of you could see what's his name from the original movie, just kind of piercing himself and tearing out of his skin to feel the pleasure and the pain.
Yeah, well, there's some more of that in this, with the trap that Dina Meyer gets into. It's also kind of, as opposed to sort of almost angelic at the end, that made me think of some of the stuff that happens in Hannibal.
Yep.
That kind of thing. And I think this one furthers that whole religious element in terms of Jigsaw and his whole deal.
Yeah.
His mythos, whether or not, because he himself doesn't seem like a religious guy.
Right.
It's he's definitely put in this God complex kind of thing.
Sure.
That I think some of the traps speak to a bit more.
Yeah. Jumping ahead just right to that next trap. It doesn't take long for Detective Diz to be trying to research the trap that we just saw. She goes home. She gets abducted, I believe, by Pigface again. She wakes up where a trap is basically claws are right into her ribs. And yeah, at this point, she does look very angelic, but once again, very Cenobite style. I guess it's just anytime you have sort of a religious pose with a whole bunch of chains coming off of you, it's a Hellraiser thing.
Well, it's also this was another case of cool it with the transitions. He keeps doing this thing. So after when they're exploring the set, this was a real-time transition too, when they're exploring the second crime scene. After the fact. And she figures out that the door's been welded shut, that this guy, even if he got out, was never going to, he got out of the things, he was never going to get out of the room. The camera starts panning over bits of body, the guy's body on the floor and other detritus, and pans up, and all of a sudden it's in her apartment and she's in the tub.
Yeah.
And so Dina Meyer had to run off camera, run around, get disrobe, and then hop into a tub, get her hair wet by the time the camera got up there. And that's physically like a very impressive thing. And you could argue that kind of harkens back to the stage performances of Grand Guignol kind of stuff, but it just doesn't work for me. And he does that a few times where it's like these merging together these scenes. I know there's a reoccurring theme of all of this being interconnected, but it doesn't, I don't think it works with that really well, or it doesn't work for any kind of like weird blending of like the mental state of any of the characters where like, you know, I'm losing time or anything.
Yeah.
It looks neat and that's fine, but I just get kind of tired of seeing it because it's very, I don't think it adds much to the proceedings.
Sure.
Much like a lot of the flash frames and stuff.
Yeah, and with this too, and I'd have to refresh my memory to be certain on this idea, but when the world of Saw looks like the world of Seven, where everything looks like a crime scene, or your apartment looks like a crime scene because it's bathed in green light and just dirt everywhere and just plain old wood panels. It doesn't look like they've moved from one location to another, like in the story.
Right.
Because everything is lit and styled the exact same way. If she was like all of a sudden in a beautiful bathroom in a nice apartment, that might feel different, you know?
Yeah. Well, even the hospital that our main character, Lynn, works at is just lit the same way as everything else. And it's this grimy, ugly place. Like this movie out of all of them this far, I think is the ugliest. It is. Visually speaking, it's the contrasts are just jacked up.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's so green and nasty looking, but it just kind of got tiresome to look at. It's like there was a thing, actually it was sort of around this time when that generation of video game consoles was coming out with the Xbox 360 and all that. And everyone was like, every new game you're making is just various shades of brown.
Oh yeah.
And that's kind of what this is. It just feels like this green, muddy, like, ugh. Well, not muddy because it's very iconic, but this green, gross looking thing. And it certainly puts you in that mindset, but it's constant. So yeah, like you said, it doesn't really offer any relief from that, depending on the different scenes that you're in.
And obviously that it's a stylistic choice. You know, they were going for that, so they are succeeding. We're just not liking it necessarily. You know, it's not a laziness. It's like up. They did exactly what they wanted to do. I just don't think it. I guess I get tired of it quickly.
Yeah, it's like 3D glasses. Like eventually you kind of figure it out. You're like, there it is.
Right.
It looks like this now.
Yeah. Detective Carey ends up not being able to. This is the one with the jar of acid, correct?
Yes. She's attached to this like crazy Bowflex. These things, the Bowflex is digging into her chest, and then there's a jar of acid that she's got to grab a key out of. Jigsaw, little puppet, shows up and says,
"Up until now, you have spent your life among the dead, piecing together their final moments. You are good at this because you, like them, are also dead. Dead on the inside. You identify more with a cold corpse than you do with a living human."
Hey, I noticed you have a career, and so you should die for that.
Yeah.
Now, regardless of what your feelings are about the police, her job is being a homicide detective. And he's like, "You're spending too much time with dead people. You need to spend more time with live people.
Yeah.
You're dead inside, so let me burn off your hands."
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
This one just felt like you were covering your ass. She was getting too close, and you're just covering your ass, Jigsaw.
Yeah, you take out a detective that's coming up behind you quickly, and it's like, no, it's all your fault, actually.
Yeah. That's his whole thing in this movie is that it's all your fault.
Yeah.
We'll get to that at the end.
Yeah, so she doesn't make it out. She does not, break free from the chains, as Wilson Phillips says. I was a little surprised to see her go. Maybe it's just because I like her from that other movie, but I'm not used to the rhythm of these movies yet, where you just kind of like kill off one of the survivors from the previous, though it should be obvious, but they just take her out right away. Yeah,
and I was surprised by that because I thought this was going to be more of
her story.
Yeah, so it's a little bit psycho in that way that you're following this one person, and then they do a twist on you. And in fact, like I guess Lyric Bent, I believe is the gentleman's name, that's the head SWAT guy.
Oh yeah,
Rig. He was actually going to be in it a bit more, but he was filming some other movie, and so we're gonna have to shift stuff.
Yeah,
there's a lot of like rewrites on the fly, but so she's taken care of. So it's basically a way to also sort of cleanse the palate of, well, now it's no longer going to be, here is this investigation that's closing in on Jigsaw. Yeah, where that's just now gone. We don't have to worry about that now. We're free to do this other.
Ramping up that tension at all.
So you lose that investigatory track as soon as that happens, because what ends up happening where you have the main story and then all the traps, feel really disconnected from one another.
Yeah.
Obviously, with the twist, it all comes together, but it was hard to kind of get on board with some of that. You could figure out what the twist was supposed to be pretty early, but it still was hard to care as much, I guess.
A little hard to track.
Because it just kind of felt like, oh, here's movie B that's happening, and eventually he'll show up. So.
There was another good bit about this trap because this one also had the camera in front of the jar of acid with her face getting all distorted in the background. So I just appreciated that they were, once again, we have a stationary trap. So of course they want to make it as visually interesting as possible. And by, they can't help themselves but to move the camera wildly around on something that's stationary because that's the style that they're going for. But I do appreciate that they had the little the distortion of the face in there, and that was kind of cute. It worked. So we cut to a new couple in another depressing apartment, and their relationship is obviously on the rocks. Chris wants a divorce, and then she just walks out on him, rolling her eyes. Now, did you know who the man was in this sequence? What it becomes later? I figured it out eventually. Yeah. But when it's one of those things that you start looking for, like any M. Night Shyamalan movie. Oh, sure. You're like, well, what's going to be the twist? Yeah. You start kind of like prepping yourself for that. So you're like, notice how carefully worded some of these things are. Certainly. It wasn't until later when I was kind of starting to get bummed out about the seeming disparate nature of the two tracks this time around. That I started, wait a minute. I wonder if this is going to be the case. But yeah, at first I didn't know. I was more just like, particularly because when she goes to a hospital as a surgeon, I'm like, why does your house look so crappy? If you're like a surgeon. Because they do the same like connected effect again, where as after Dina Meyer loses her thing, because she unlocks it. She gets the key out of the acid and unlocks it, but can't get the stuff out. Amanda shows up and this awesome red trench coat. It's revealing, Amanda is definitely in on it. You see this distant shot of her after having her torso ripped open, and it goes down this hallway and then spins, and you're in these people's apartment. Yeah. You're like, oh, do they live down the hall from Once
this?
Again, the apartments look so crappy that they're all kind of similar.
It's a terrible town to live in.
Yes. Yeah. This is 7. This is Gotham City. Everything looks terrible. So yeah, she's an ER nurse. She saves a kid on the table who's going through a rough patch right there. Then she gets dressed down by a fellow nurse for some reason. This seemed like weird drama to me that like she just saved the kid, right? By maybe like, is this a nurse version of my favorite scene in a police procedural? Was she a loose cannon and she just got dressed down by the chief? I think
so. Yeah. She didn't have to turn on her badge and gun. Right. But just still like, hey, get your head in the game. Yes. You were dragging your feet to save that kid. You should have done that way, way better. Just to give a little kind of like, there's something going on in this character's life that carrying forward that drama that you got a little bit introduced to.
She gets locked in a locker room and it gets all flashy really quick. And then Pig Mask shows up again to abduct her. She wakes up tied to a chair, but noticeably not in a device. And all the lights go on, and it's basically like a Jigsaw bat cave. Like the place is just gigantic. You can see that they got a $10 million budget instead of their $4 million budget this time. His badass like workshop keeps like tripling in size. I'm not against it. I just think it's funny.
Yeah.
It's pretty neat.
He's just got so many of them. Because this is the I guess the first one and the second one are the same warehouse, but he's just got a bunch of warehouses, and like, so I imagine the rise of like Amazon is probably just killing him. Yes. Because they're just buying up all this property like warehouses. Like there's like, oh, I don't have my murder playpen. But it's gigantic. Where they are is sort of a makeshift hospital room for John Jigsaw.
He's bedridden. John's file is shown to our nurse friend here. She used to work at the hospital where he got his prognosis. And he gets mad at her for bad bedside manner or something there.
Yeah, because she's using fancy doctor terms instead of just telling him you are going to die. But I love that, and this is kind of indicative of this whole series, is that when Amanda hands him her folder, it's like boom, 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 and like swish, smooth, look at the numbers on it. And there's his name. It's like, it's a file. Calm down. It's not that big of it. We all know this. Yes. But it really tries to zhuzh it up with some fancy editing. And it's just some paper. And so he wants her to save him.
Mm-hmm.
and Amanda puts on a collar. And I really like this trap just as a concept.
Oh, sure.
It's this collar that goes over the chest, and it's got a bunch of shotgun shells in holders, and then like each one is sort of primed with its own little trigger arm thing. So if we find out that it's connected to his heart rate monitor, if that goes dead or she like gets a certain distance away, those will go off. And I like later when Amanda is describing this and trying to tell her, like, oh, you're going to try to sneak out of it.
You could try and take the collar off yourself. That could be tricky. Slightest knock in the wrong place could trigger it. I should know. I built it.
All that tells you is like Amanda doesn't know what she's doing.
No.
Like, look, if you like move your head a certain way, this could go off. But,
Absolutely.
that's your problem.
Right. It's worth the risk. Yeah. Jigsaw does. He does say this bit here. How long do you think I have left? She confirms not long. And then he says,
Death is a surprise party. Unless, of course, you're already dead on the inside.
I'm like, man, that is some 19-year-old goth kid journal writing right there. Yeah.
Just James O'Barr is Jigsaw.
Yeah. Yes.
There was
Right.
also a thing here where he's like, well, the reason we got you is starts like dressing her down about her life, pointing out that she's taking antidepressants, which to him is a moral failing.
Okay. Yeah.
But then it's also like you've had every possible advantage, but refuse to advance. She's a doctor.
Yes.
I'm a 40-year-old guy talking about Saw to nobody, and you're telling me this person is blowing it.
Yeah.
Like, sure, man. Yeah, she's just not doing it. She's
Yep.
a failure.
So, there's a little bit more for our Jigsaw Rise and Grind Instagram page there. He's just like, oh,
Yeah.
surgeon level, still not good enough. Do better with all
not
of your
good.
advantages.
You should be thinking about owning that hospital. Yeah.
Yes.
But it's just he's just trying to nag her into actually like taking care of him, and Amanda is certainly threatening her with that as well.
Yeah.
And that actor's playing Lynn, Bahar Somek, if I'm saying that, Sumek, if I'm saying that right. I thought she was good, although she looked a lot like Meadow Soprano, which I found
can see that.
distracting, but that's no fault of hers. But just I'm like, oh, Jamie Lynn Sigler.
Yeah, she evidently did not like horror movies, did not see the first two Saw films, and basically for the first month of production went home and had a nightmare every night because she's just not used to enjoying this kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, she obviously chose to take the role. However, she she was not prepared. She was not in the Saw family, if you will, to
The
know
Saw is family.
Yeah. She said that she was glad to take the role because at the time people were only offering like evil Middle Eastern parts to her, like terrorist type of parts. And she's like, no, tired of that. I'll be in a Saw film instead. Which
is interesting. And I probably want to save a more in-depth part of discussion of this probably for the wrap of the whole thing. But the fact that, as we've talked about this being kind of a reflection of 9/11, that rather than having this be from the outside, having the having an other commit all this terror, whether it be foreign or whatever, it's just an old white guy. And particularly in the post 9/11 landscape, that was an interesting move. Yeah, but we can save that for a more in-depth thing in the wrap up. But
sure.
Yeah, no. I don't doubt that was the case. Being the post 9/11 landscape, that it was like, hey, do you want to be evil and have us all hate you, or do you want to be in a Saw movie
and be the hero ish?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, no one's a hero in a Saw movie, I suppose. She wasn't doing good enough at her job.
Again, the weird his weird rules and justifications for this stuff is really pushed to the limit in this one.
There's also a guy being held captive in a wooden box, and John says he needs to see how this last game goes. He wants to stay alive to see it. There's a recording in the box with the guy, of course, and it just says, Jeff, you've become a shell of yourself due to the vengeance you feel towards a drunk driver who killed your child. When you get through all your tests, the person who took your child from you will be in front of you, and your goal is to forgive him. So we have our big moral push for the movie.
Did you recognize that actor?
I did not.
Playing Jeff. That is Angus McFadden.
Okay.
Who I've seen him in a bunch of stuff, but really what I know him from, Equilibrium.
Oh my goodness.
He was like the second in command the guy pulling the strings.
Yes.
DuPont.
Oh, fun.
And so that's the first time I saw him, like, oh yeah, Equilibrium. And then I thought about that movie, and then I got sad. So.
And you're like, God, I really want to get back to watching Saw 3.
Yeah.
After thinking of Equilibrium.
After thinking about the printout of Tay Diggs' face on the floor.
Best part.
Yep. Fantastic film. You should check it out.
Mm-hmm. Amanda watches our hero nurse take care of John and tells him that Jeff is now out of the box. I think he just like kind of crashes through the bottom of it or falls over or something. Mm-hmm. And her name's Lynn.
Lynn. Yeah, it's the doctor.
Yeah, so she needs to get John to a hospital, and they just stand there and yell at each other for a while about steroids. And she does have a kind of funny line.
I have the instruments to cut someone open. I don't have the tools to save a life.
I thought it was actually pretty clever, especially because we're in a Saw film. Good line. Mm-hmm. So at this point, John goes into some sort of like shock. And I'll give her credit here. Amanda tries to stabilize him, and she does look like truly afraid in this moment where like John might actually be pushing off. Then she flops right back in being too, arrogant and everything right after that.
So this movie is a lot more focused on the Amanda Jigsaw relationship, which is cool, which is a great idea because like that's fascinating. There's a lot of stuff there. Mm-hmm. You really start getting the sense of this sort of emotional and psychological hold he has on her because she is a wreck and is like not listening to reason about, her Lynn telling her like, I can't do this here. He needs to be in a hospital.
Yep.
And just like, no, I don't care. You're fixing him now. And just that it's really much more of an emotional thing for this character that we've seen. And I think Shawnee Smith does a really good job with it.
She's great in this. Great. Yeah. Her and Tobin Bell hung out for several weeks before production even started, just learning about each other, like their actual personal lives to try to create that. And I'm sure that they were not given 3 weeks of day rate to do that. Like that's like, especially on a lower budget. Well, 10 million, but whatever. But I always appreciate that when actors are just like, as long as the director is cool with it, just start doing your own setup in pre-production before. Yeah,
so I think their relationship, kind of like, again, with Donnie Wahlberg, Tobin Bell bit, I think the Amanda Jigsaw relationship is the most interesting bit in this whole thing.
Jeff is wandering around some creepy hallways, and he finds a doorway that just says, "Face your fears." I feel like these notes on these doors, just random chat PT type of things that just come at you.
Yeah.
Like that, I don't know if Face Your Fears has to do with any of this particular room.
Yeah.
That's a small quibble. So he walks into the Face Your Fears doorway and finds a nude woman hanging by her wrists from a chain. A recorder plays back Jigsaw saying that this woman was the sole eyewitness to his son's accident. And there should be a key somewhere to free her, but she starts getting sprayed with water all over her naked body. And
this is a freezer, by the way.
I was just about to say that this is a freezer, a meat packing facility. Yes.
This isn't a Girls Gone Wild bit. Like this is it's bad.
Face your fears, right?
If it was a naked woman
sprayed down with water. She gets encased in ice while he starts reaching for the key. Now, both of these effects I think are pretty neat.
Yes.
Not only his face getting stuck to the bar, Christmas Story style, like you've said before, we've all done this. I think I've done this, but I can't remember. But I know that pain as soon as it registers on his face.
Yeah. This is going to be a reoccurring theme of him encountering these people, them like begging for their lives, and him thinking about it while they suffer immensely, and him eventually going, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And this one's particularly frustrating because I didn't understand, because you're kind of presented to this guy's story like in medias res, sort of like this is already happening. Mm-hmm. I understand the idea that someone seeing something and not stepping forward is bad.
Yeah.
But I don't understand what that would have done here. Mm-hmm. Like, would she have been able to save his kid? Would like that have done something to the sentencing for the guy?
The sentencing, maybe.
And it ultimately doesn't matter because it's really more about Jeff's reaction to the whole thing and how like him just being this vessel for vengeance versus like forgiveness. And, he manages to sort of find forgiveness, but it's too late.
Yes.
She is frozen solid. And that is a brutal way to go.
Yeah, it is.
And not to tip the hand too much right away, but like, what were you testing her for?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he just basically lets this person die. And it seems weird that, I mean, this isn't the first time this has happened where someone else is a part of the test and has nothing to do. Like, why are you testing them?
Yeah.
Were they not like holy enough to be called?
Yeah. But the icicle effect of her body is pretty well done.
Yeah.
She just turns into just a frozen woman. A woman encased in ice. And it does look pretty neat.
Yeah, great physical effects.
He walks into next room and finds a card that says, "One bullet will end it all," and a bullet. Amanda is looking around and finds the bear trap helmet, all the other neat stuff. Or sorry, I think Lynn was looking around and finds the bear trap.
Lynn,
helmet. Another pretty good line here of,
I know it's hard to concentrate when you're surrounded by so many things you could kill me with.
Amanda comes in and calls it at Lynn, just saying like, look, I know there's a bunch of ways that you think that you're going to escape right now. And just so you know, here are all the ways that you will not escape if you do put an axe in my back.
Well, I also like there's this growing frustration with Amanda and this woman. And at first it was bothering me a little bit, just like, gosh, these two characters really look a lot alike.
A little bit, yeah.
That really kind of comes into play with Amanda's fear and stuff later.
Yes.
So that was purposeful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Amanda's growing frustration with this whole thing, and she's updating John on, like, oh, this guy, yeah, he's out of the freezer now. Oh, okay, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Going off of like that, this person, what did this person do that they're even getting tested? They're just getting frozen to death. Back to what I was saying before about Jigsaw and the last one about like the Jigsaw's whole thing is like, if you're trying to, you should be appreciating life, but this is how he's spending his time.
Mm-hmm.
And you get to see this movie spends a lot of time with flashbacks and like see him constructing the doll and stuff like that. And I see him just being someone that knew him in regular life and being like, oh my God, John Kramer, I haven't seen you forever. What have you been up to? Well, I had cancer and then I tried to kill myself, but that didn't work. Oh my God, that sounds awful.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks like you came through it. Are you doing okay? Yeah, I'm doing great. Well, what are you up to now? I made a doll that tells people what to do. Cool. That sounds great, man. Gotta go very quickly. Bye.
Don't call me.
Yeah. But I guess this is how he's spending his life.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
how he's appreciating it.
He was a new man after he attempted to drive his car off the cliff or something like that.
That's true.
But yeah, we do get a whole bunch of these kind of flashbacks of just showing Amanda's history with him. And then in the present, John gives her a little pep talk about, these are the tools that will save you. It's all kind of ambiguous and strange and all that kind of thing.
And I feel bad. And I think I even want to say that they kind of mentioned this, that Lee Winnell mentioned this in an interview about like how they were so focused on the John Amanda thing that they were like, oh yeah, we got to have some traps. And
right.
I kind of wish they had spent a little bit more time with that because, as I said, this is the most interesting part of it. And there are certain things that happen that you're like, you just relegated that to a flashback? That seems like a pretty major moment.
Certainly.
You just went like, and then that happened.
Yeah.
Which I think sort of honestly hurts the whole affair. But but at this point, he gets back to Jeff. Oh boy, this section is fantastic. He encounters the judge of his Judge Halden, which I'm wondering is a Blood Meridian reference. Judge Holden.
Oh, from the judge
is
one of the greatest villains in fiction.
Yeah, much different character. And,
yes,
just kind of like if that was it as this clever little empty reference. But it's this guy is chained or is pinned to the bottom of this vat by his neck. Yeah, he's got this collar around his neck. He's screaming like, hey, let me out of here. He's dressed very nicely, still wearing shirt and tie. Yeah. And Jigsaw's voice comes in. There's a tape recorder. Jigsaw's voice comes in. It's like, hey, this is the judge that gave, him. He gave your son's killer a very lenient sentence. What happens here? What Jeff has to figure out this time is whether or not to save the judge. There's a key he can get by burning all of his son's things. We've had a flashback of him back at home with his surviving daughter, and she touched one of his toys, and oh God, you leave stuff alone in his room. That's his. She's like, if you want to burn all these, you can get a key to save this guy, or you can let him drown. Drown in what? Well, in pigs. These pigs start being carried in by this crane and dropped in this grinder that turns him into this disgusting brown and white goo that sprays all over this guy and slowly fills up the tank. And that is definitely one of those like, hey, Mom, I got the part rolls. The glamour of your average actor.
Yes. Again, to quote MST and Mitchell, this is what I'll think about when I think of Saw 3. And I unfortunately will think about it. This scene, much like the needle pit, and I will say, for me personally, like 3 to 5 times worse than the needle pit, they completely succeeded on this scene. And it makes me gag even like thinking about it, and I've not stopped thinking about this scene since I watched the movie.
It is so disgusting because these pigs, and apparently they were sterilized maggots on the pig.
I
don't know how you sterilize maggots.
How do you sterilize a maggot? Like, does each maggot get a little needle? Like, is that another PA job? You know, like,
is it something that they're like killed and boiled and they're just stapled onto these fake pigs? I don't know. There are only 4 fake pigs apparently, but they're dropping in and they get into some goop. Apparently it's like smelled like eggs. It was just disgusting. And this poor guy had to be just like covered in it again and again and again. Now, initially, Jeff was going to have to dive into a vat of goop and like get the key. But they're like, it's a little bit too fear factor.
And I even forgot that show existed. Ugh.
Yeah. But it's Jeff going, I don't know.
Yeah.
As this guy just pig after pig is being ground on this dude. And I mean, it's also something that like you could show someone this, be like, no, guess what? You want to be a vegan? Watch this.
Yes.
It imagines that all pork is just a brown mass. It's disgusting.
I only started eating meat like here and there again about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. And I was vegetarian for 17 years before that.
Yeah.
This scene had me. Yeah. Kind of double thinking a few things. And as much as I love me some bacon now, I hope I don't think about that when I treat myself to some bacon sometime in the next month.
Yeah, it's what hot dogs are made of is all those insides. It's a hot dog factory.
I did see some footage of the Boss Man director. They put together like a director's diary or something like that, and it's about 9 minutes. You can watch it on YouTube. And I gotta say, maybe it was a different time, but I wouldn't have kept in a lot of those clips of me if I was saying half the stuff that he said on camera in that documentary. And they're not all terrible things, but he says something to the effect of, well, we're 2 days out from shooting now, which means the actors are here, which that's a lot of fun. Because then he starts implying that all the actors want to change the lines and change the blocking. And then it cuts to a sequence with him and Amanda arguing over how to block a scene and how much she wants to change the script. And I was just like, part of me does like seeing that kind of like tough nuts and bolts stuff just because I love that behind the scenes type of stuff. That's not good for your marketing, though, this whole 9 minute sequence.
But I will say, like, I will say I understand it because, like, you got picked out. The script of yours got picked out and turned into Saw 2. You got to direct it.
That's true.
Direct this like huge sequel, and it's huge. So you're probably like, I think I know what I'm doing.
That could very well be. Yes.
Let me, I think it's a little bit high on your own supply. Like you've like you're just good enough that like things are good. You haven't experienced any kind of like real downside to it yet. So you're still up there. So
yeah,
that's something that could come from that for sure. But
definitely,
I agree. It's like, don't be a jerk, but it's one thing to know it, but you have to know it. Usually that comes with experience.
Yeah, totally. There was a point where his EP was over his shoulder, and sometimes I'm just amazed at how young these people look. Or 2005 before, I'm like, you were in charge of production at a major studio. Yeah. You're like 32. But anyway, he says to the point of like the guy's just like, you're 20 minutes over, and they start arguing over the time. And Bousman says, like, look, everybody knows that a film production set gets 12 hours. He makes me wrap it up in 11 hours and 30 minutes. And I'm like, hell yes. Good on the producers. Just trying to get the crew home on time to keep a director at bay a little bit because the producer needs to like keep good relationships with all these department heads. And I was like, that's cool. I like that producer a lot, actually.
Yeah, not everyone that works on this movie is as in love with it as you are.
Yeah, there's a poor man in pig guts down there. And that's why I thought of this little behind the scenes thing, because it did show a long sequence, probably like 5 or 6 blasts of the pig guts onto the actor on the monitor where the director and it looked like the script supervisor and maybe a producer were standing. And the director was cracking up so hard every time this poor actor got blasted with pig guts. I can't decide if I would be doing the same, or I think I would have a healthy amount of like, oh my God, is he okay? After every single one, I would feel so bad.
It's so funny. And I don't want to pretend that he's some kind of like horrible asshole for these two isolated things.
Of course not. Of course not.
I was listening to this interview. There's an official Saw podcast that they were doing in lead up to Spiral that I was listening to. And for Saw 3, they actually interviewed Leigh Whannell, and he talked about being on set for the first one, like coming to set, and no one having any idea who he was because he's first time writer, whatever. And watching the bathroom set being built and kind of being like overtaken and almost wanting to cry of like, this thing that I've made is going where Darren Bousman just went right to like, suffer for me.
Yeah, certainly. I'm going to make this happen. In that same video, actually, it does show those two guys like bickering a little bit on set. And how about Leigh Whannell just saying like, yeah, I'll come back in and like punch up your script because it needs to be or something to that effect too. They're going at each other a little bit, but yeah.
Wow. But point is, big salute to Barry Flatman, the guy that played Judge Hall, for just getting gooped,
man,
gratuitously gooped.
Yeah.
But it was great. It was disgusting. But again, Jeff just is like, fine. And then Burns, like he just let a woman die, but then he's like, oh, I feel bad about burning these stuffed animals.
Yeah.
Gets the key, is able to save the judge. Just, the stench has got to be so bad. But the judge, it gets out.
And then, see, again, this is where I give this movie all the credit in the world for getting the reaction out of me that it wanted to. But we go from pig guts to literal brain surgery on full-on close-ups of sawing up a skull. Surgeon Len needs to alleviate the pressure on his brain, kind of like trepanation, I think, which I'm fascinated by that idea. But she basically just peels off his skin, peels off his hair, takes a saw to his skull, all in an excruciating close-up. And of course, John Kramer has to be awake during this procedure. Yeah,
and apparently they got this through the MPAA because they're like, you could turn on a medical documentary on TV and see it. So, ha 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 ha.
Yeah,
and I guess it's pretty correct. Other than you would you would have like water going on the drill, so the drill when it was going through the skull wouldn't heat up and get hot brain. That's it's the thing you don't want is hot brain. So it does matter. Jigsaw can handle it. But so Amanda is losing her mind watching this happen. And this results in John having this kind of like fugue state where he's remembering what is supposed to be, I guess, his wife.
I think so.
And you can tell that because it does the movie language thing of staring wordlessly at your smiling wife in a pristine setting who's also smiling back at you. I guess that's what people
sunspots
do. Yeah, with
going
sunspots,
like lens flares. Yeah.
And then in that moment, he says, I love you. And Amanda is like, oh, crap. He's talking to the doctor. He's trying to replace me.
Right.
Ooh, that can't stand. And so that's starting to brew now.
Nothing like fully awake brain surgery to bring two people together in an excessive moment there.
Well, and I think it's here as well that because of this, then Amanda starts thinking about her relationship with Jigsaw. And this is kind of what I was talking about, where it's like, well, this is all just a flashback. You get these little snippets of them doing stuff and like setting up the trap, setting up the first saw and all the stuff. Good Lord. I don't need to watch the entire setup of the first movie in this movie. So much time spent. Now, granted, I watched the uncut version.
I think I did too.
And it doesn't seem like, when I was reading about the differences, it doesn't seem like this was necessarily added on to. Like, so this is something that was in the theatrical cut. But it while it shows their relationship, it also, when you spend so much time showing me how they're doing things, then you're raising more questions about how other things are getting done.
Sure.
If Jason just bilocates in Friday the 13th, he's Jason. I guess he can just do that. You know, you start wondering about the logistics of all of this, and it starts to become a little bit like, well, how would that even work? And so I don't know how effective that is, but I did like watching them together doing stuff. And the revelation that, and I don't know if this is now or later, but that she went back after the first one ended, she went back and killed Adam.
Yes.
To put him out of his misery. I mean, eventually that'll be used against her, but I don't think that was a bad move. Like you were just gonna let that guy die.
Yeah, some of the stuff, like I did like watching them assemble the traps to a degree, but I kind of also wish we would have gotten like a nice solid, I mean, instead of montage flashback style, just a scene of him kind of, for lack of a better word, like brainwashing her, like bringing her over. And then you could even like put a bullet on the end of that scene with them like, all right, now let's go set up the bathroom or something like to that effect, or like getting the first 2 hacksaws out or something. But just a little bit more of a direct emotional connection, I think would have.
Yeah, because I mean, like I think you're right with that brainwashing thing, because he is talking to her. This is apparently supposed to take place like after she escaped from the reverse bear trap, where he's like, you have to give everything to me. Like I have to be in control of all of this, and you will devote yourself to me. And we kind of talked about in the last one, like how when she gets upset and tries to kill herself, he makes her go through another thing, that his system can't fail you. It can only be failed. And so, you definitely get this very bad dad thing with him. He's very controlling and strange. And so I found that even though she's, as the movie progresses, you find out what a psychotic she is. I found she was the most sympathetic character in it as well.
In a strange way. Yes.
Yeah. Because she got messed with.
Yes.
And particularly because you have like, John's thing is, as far as we know at this point, John Jigsaw's whole thing is that I had cancer and I tried to kill myself and it didn't work. Amanda's whole thing is that I got arrested through some trumped up charges, went to jail, got addicted to heroin, my life fell apart. Then I get kidnapped by some weirdo. I survive, and then he makes me help him out, and like he's really taking advantage of her. And then she tries to kill herself and takes advantage of her again. Try to punish her and like test her and psychologically abuse her and all this stuff. It's like, I kind of with Amanda right now.
She's the victim here. Correct.
To a degree.
So, yeah, exactly. Amanda does get so jealous of Lynn in this sequence that she almost draws a gun on her, but John does specifically say, back off. This is where we get a flashback of Amanda suffocating from the first film using a plastic bag in the bathroom. Pretty great. On the way to this final trap, the judge, who is now free and probably, just reeking in his sopped up clothes, tries to give I
would be like, guess what? I'm going nude. Like, you got to do it.
I don't want to do it. Yeah.
Like, this is nasty. I don't want to be that vulnerable, but like, I stink so bad. I can't wear these clothes anymore.
Right.
But maybe you somehow get used to it. I don't know.
Yeah, that could be. Yeah. I mean, I imagine that entire place reeks too, that entire facility, because I think it is a meat packing plant or something like that.
It seems like it, yeah. And it also, though, to be fair, like he could have said like, oh, I should get this stuff off, and Jeff, having seen the nude woman freezing me, like, why don't you keep those on? Right. Although, I mean, wet pig guts is going to freeze even worse. But
that's true. I
suppose maybe the fat will help you. I don't know.
Pigsicle. So Judge tries to give a speech about, the classic vengeance won't bring anybody back from the dead. Yada, yada. We've heard that 100 times before. Yeah. Jeff walks into the room, and now we see yet another kind of religious pose in this trap. I think they call this trap the rack. It is just a man in a crucifixion pose, but he does have contraptions all over him, including around his neck and his wrists and ankles, and on a tape recorder. John's voice is on the recorder and says, well, this is the guy who drove the car that hit your kid. Have at him.
Does do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Apply here, Jeff. Make your choice.
And then you see a flashback, and again, like presumably this is that guy's point of view of him having hit the kid and being really upset about it. He's not some like junkie or drunk or anything. He's just a guy, and the kid was out in the middle of the road, and he ended up hitting the kid, and is like stays there and is upset about it, which again makes me go like, well, what would the other witness, what would she have done in that situation?
Oh, true. Again, good call.
That doesn't matter because it's just about Jeff's reaction. But it is like, it immediately makes you feel bad for the guy, because it immediately like tells you, rather than be like, well, this is up to Jeff to figure out. It's like, no, this guy's actually sympathetic and he should do it, which is a little bit, it sides the decision more with the guy, like that Jeff should absolutely forgive him, not out of any, that forgiving him perhaps is the right thing to do, or moving on with your life versus vengeance is the right thing to do, but more like, oh, but look, this guy felt bad too, so he's really sympathetic. He's a human being. Which it might have been more interesting to not have that, it might have felt a little bit more to have Jeff make this decision rather than knowing anything about the guy.
That's true.
You know, as an audience member, I'd see it kind of working, but immediately making sympathy for him. But personally, I kind of like the idea of giving it more emotional weight by putting that more on Jeff.
On Jeff's decision.
Than on him. Yeah.
The rack is a device that starts twisting your arms and ankles. It's hard to even describe the geometry of it, but like it's almost as if your wrists are twisting forward, like twisting your arms completely, like thin ways.
Yeah, imagine any Steven Seagal movie where he breaks a guy's arm, because it happens in every movie.
Yeah,
it's that, but instead of just like this big abomination, it's a machine that does it.
And of course, there's a way to get out of it. But it's a key that is strapped to a shotgun by a string. And of course, if you pull on the string, the shotgun will go off. And he tries to... I got a little confused on John's message here, because he says something like, will you take a bullet for the man who killed your kid? But if you take the bullet, he's going to die anyway, correct?
Yeah, it's also a shotgun. Like they're pellets. It's not like, oh, well, I'll let it shoot me in the arm as I grab this thing and I'll suffer, but I'll let him out. It is a double barrel shotgun in a glass case with one opening at the end. So you kind of have to like face it down. Real stupid. But the judge, it's starting to happen. The guy's arms are starting to turn like, his feet. And it's a neat contraption. I do like the design of this thing. And Jeff again is like, as this guy is screaming.
Jeopardy music playing in the background,
I don't know. Yeah, and the judge is trying to help him and tells him, and this again is like a thing that kind of changes your perspective of this whole thing when he's like, just standing there, you're an accomplice to murder. That's Jigsaw's thing. If you're like, I don't murder anyone. Yeah, but you really set it up to happen.
Yeah.
But Jeff figures out like, oh, this clamp that has the key, I can kind of like pull it forward a little bit and unscrew it and just get the key that way. And he's like, got the key. And lets it go. It ends up firing the shotgun at the judge who's standing right there. But it's treated by Jeff as kind of like, oh well.
Yeah.
Nevertheless.
Got to break a few eggs here.
Yeah.
And the way that the judge is shot is interesting, though, because it almost looks like the bullet grazes the side of his face, or the pellets do. And it definitely takes off a chunk of his face, but they make it a point to cut back to a reaction shot from the judge at one point. And I thought that maybe the judge was going to have like one last burst of energy and like sacrifice himself or something like that. But nah, he's just kind of slumped over. He's gone.
Dead and stinky. And it's also, surprise, surprise, too late to save the guy.
Yes, that's true.
He's already like, because he twisting his neck.
Yeah, he does yell, I forgive him, a few times.
Not enough. Still, the stuff's in motion.
Gets down on his knees in front of him like a cross, too. Like he's like supplicating himself towards a cross in that sequence at the very end.
You know, Amanda comes in to tell John that he's done with the third thing. And like Lynn and John are holding hands. John has like confessed that how important Amanda is to him, to Lynn. And that like, he says that she's the closest I ever got to a connection, you know, other than my wife. But the flashback. Closest I ever got to a connection. And then, finds like Amanda's like in full on jealousy mode, and the surgery has been successful in terms of alleviating his pain. And John's like, all right, he's out of thing. She did the thing. Take the collar off. She's like, absolutely not. Amanda's not doing it because she's increasingly jealous. You got to do it. You're going to ruin 4 lives if you shoot her. And Amanda pretty much reveals that like, I don't believe in your philosophy. It's kind of revealed that she's been killing people. She's been setting up these traps where people can't escape. It's not Jigsaw, which leads you to kind of wonder, like, because he's still making the tapes and doing the voices and stuff like that. Did he plan it out and she thwarted him, or did she just tell him like, no, it'll work out. Just record this and
like, did she go back and like fix him up to be unwinnable after the person's already in there, you know?
Right. Yeah. Did she weld the door shut? And you get, because it's the Saw movie, you get a whole bunch of flashback to all the different things that she's done, including an extended thing with her and Donnie Wahlberg, where she encounters Donnie Wahlberg in the halls after he has busted his foot to get out.
Oh, yeah.
And they fight. He tells her, like, you'll never be Jigsaw. You'll never be the guy. So he's apparently still alive because she leaves him there.
Yes.
He's like, I'm not, this whole thing has actually been a test for you, for Amanda.
Yeah.
This psychological torture of like, no, you failed me yet again. And here's this weird test I set for you, but that's your fault. That you blew it rather than me communicating openly with you. Because she shoots Lynn. She just shoots Lynn, and then then because Jeff comes in, he's got the one bullet.
Because bursting
Jeff
in.
comes in
Yeah.
and shoots her, and it's revealed that Jeff is her husband.
Mhm.
That the way that the marriage, the divorce, the guy I was talking about at the beginning was Jeff and her because she's unhappy.
Yep.
Jeff shoots Amanda. Then Jigsaw lays it all out about how like this actually was a test for you. I can't abide a murderer, even though I've set people up to murder. Even though you won your test by murdering somebody.
Exactly.
You know, like I can't allow it. What a twist. Amanda dies, and then he tells Jeff, like, well, okay, hold up.
Still more.
This is so incredibly fucked up because he basically says, like, you know, your wife, I could call a hospital in, you know, I could get an ambulance here in like 4 minutes, or you could kill me and like kill us, doom us all this stuff. But basically, like, this whole thing is like, look, I set this all up, but you're not going to forgive me. That's pretty fucked up, man.
Yeah.
That's pretty fucked up. And it's like, okay.
Right.
But Jeff doesn't. Jeff slits Jigsaw's throat with the saw blade.
A circular saw.
Causing Lynn's collar to go off. She was dead anyway, but Lynn's collar to go off. Blow her face off. And guess what? Jigsaw's got a tape that says, I've actually got your child. I said, like, you'd be confronted with the man that took your child, and that was me. There's got to be one more test. I'm really not looking forward to spending more time with Jeff. I do not like Jeff.
Jeff's not that interesting. Yeah.
Jeff's not that interesting. He's a one-note guy. And like, yeah, every test with him was him just waiting, and then deciding to do the right thing. And it was not interesting. There was no real character growth it was just like a way to do set pieces.
Yeah.
To appease the audience with that while we were trying to tell this other movie over here. And it didn't really work for me. Yeah. I liked the traps, but they felt ancillary to the whole affair.
Sure. So in this movie too, the fact that now, again, I'm watching these, I don't know, they might as well be for the first time because it's been so long since I've watched these. And they were never ones that I returned back to. So most of these I think I've just seen once or not at all. But just knowing that these movies fold in upon themselves as we go further, I was starting to take notice of a couple of other things in here. And Amanda finds a file folder with her name written on it. And I don't think that they address that at all in this movie. There is a moment that I have no idea what it means at all. John Kramer pours wax onto an audio tape.
Yes.
I don't know what that ended up doing. So what I'm just guessing is they were already writing part 4 when they were filming part 3. It only took them 3 movies in to start laying groundwork for the sequels so that they can more easily fold in on themselves.
Yeah, which is funny because it felt a little bit like with them, like, let's do one more for the Gipper. That it was almost like Friday the 13th part 3, where they're like, fine, we'll do one more, but we'll kill Jason, and that'll be the end of it. Whereas this one, they knew they're still going to make more. This thing's, you know, the concept of a franchise was well in place at this point.
Exactly.
So like, they're going to make more. So we don't have to necessarily be involved, but let's set something up to make this interesting while we're also trying to close it out, because in theory, Jigsaw is dead, but there's so many other movies that he's going to show up in flashbacks, or everything will, you know, he will have had everything in place, which is, again, like there's so much of this stuff that like I want to get into, but I'm kind of waiting for this whole thing to unfold, even if they're retconning stuff. Because I mean, there is sort of an element of, right now anyway, that, and we talked about this in the last movie as well, of Jigsaw always being like a step ahead, or like, well, I knew you were going to do that. So if you are that omniscient, for lack of a better word, if you know that much about this person and you know they're going to fail, why did you do it in the first place? You know, it's like, then aren't you complicit in their murder? Because you knew this was going to happen. So, but you know, I got to wait for the whole scheme to unfold.
We're definitely going to be looking at that It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia meme of you with all the red strings of yarn.
It's insane.
As we get to there. Yes.
Yeah. Like I should keep start like a crazy document. Like I'm like Kevin Spacey in Seven. I've just got folders and folders of just things written about Jigsaw.
Right.
Because it is, I mean, I do think it's easy to, on a surface level, just accept this thing like as written of like, well, he's just this lunatic, and but he's actually like a hypocrite, and that's kind of bullshit. Rather than kind of what perhaps that says beyond that, or you know, rather than doing the cinema scenes of like, aha, he said this, but this. But then seeing how that all kind of ties together. And I don't like Jigsaw, but I do think this is interesting enough that I'm excited to keep watching and see how this sort of unfolds and what they keep doing with this as a concept. Because the idea of just like, what if a guy was a hypocrite is not new. I mean,
right.
Even Betsy Palmer, Jason Voorhees' mom, was killing people that had nothing to do with her kid. And again, it's this thing of like, you're not going to explain it to them. You're not going to like, well, actually you're wrong. And they're going to think, oh, nuts. You know what? You're right.
Yeah.
But it's more like, how are they playing with that dichotomy and that hypocrisy that I think is kind of interesting. And I think with Amanda taking what this guy was teaching and being like, murder them all, you got it. Is a fascinating thing. And I'm sad to see that end in the sense already. That I like these two characters together, and I wish I would have seen more with them. And I'm sure I will in flashbacks and as they retcon everything. But I liked them way more than I cared about Jeff doing anything.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, what you're talking about for me is the primary motivator to watch the rest of these movies. Not that we wouldn't, but I'm just saying that like the traps are kind of fun, but I want to watch how ridiculous all these retcons get and how how these are going to feed back on themselves. I'm genuinely interested in seeing like how wacky it's going to get, because I don't have enough of an emotional investment to these movies to care whether these foldbacks work or not. I'm just more like, that was dumb, but whatever. I feel like that's going to be my attitude.
And that's producing, because I think this is the first one that we've encountered thus far that like the sequels, as it stands now, we're early days. But as it stands now, that they are really interconnected, and it seems like they're going to stay that way, because you have in the front of the 13th, you had like, well, okay, we kind of did for the first like 4, and then it sort of became like almost like the oral tradition of Jason. Where it's like, we're just going to tell some stories that involve Jason, but they're not really Friday the 13th things, or he's going to go to space at one point. Phantasm is Phantasm; it has no connection to anything at all. No. Silent Night, Deadly Night goes off on its own thing. Final Destination was kind of its own thing; like it stopped being sequential at a certain point. But these are like dead set to be like, no, this is going to be tied together. Like one thing is going to be Lost, the movie. Yeah. And I'm interested to see how that plays out and how they're able to keep that going. And if they're able to keep that somewhat interesting.
Even intact.
Yeah. This is the first. I mean, I do like that for being in the mid 2000s, and perhaps that predates this trend, but it's not like Saw Origins, Saw : Jigsaw's thought process or whatever you'd call it. Jigsaw's Revenge. It's just Saw 3. And I just like that pared down simplicity of like the third Saw movie. It's Saw 3.
Yep. I like that. Yeah.
And that they don't change that until eventually they have to do something else.
Exactly. So let's honor our dead. Troy, played by Jay LaRose. Chains in body exploded. Detective Carey, played by Dinah Meyer. Ribs torn out by trap. Danica Scott, played by Deborah McCabe, frozen solid. Adam Faulkner Starheight, played by Leigh Whannell, suffocated with plastic bag. Judge Halden, played by Barry Flatman, shot in the face with shotgun. Timothy Young, played by Mfo Kao, limbs and head twisted around in rack. Amanda Young, played by Shawnee Smith, shot in the neck by Jeff. Lynn Denyon, played by Bahar Sumik, head blown off by collar trap. John Kramer, played by Tobin Bell, throat slit with circular saw. Two last questions for you. Favorite trap of this one?
Got to go with pig guts.
Pig guts.
I mean, while I think the crucifixion trap was really neat, pig guts, it's just disgusting. And like, it's also pretty brainless compared to some of the other ones as well. What if we just put some slop on a dude? So
yeah,
well, I'm for it. Just them throwing up their hands and being like, let's just be gross with it.
There were times when it would cut back to more pigs getting thrown down that thing, and it just made it look like a Looney Tunes cartoon of just like, yep, they're still coming. Exactly, they're still coming down, and I was still revolted every single time. You know, it
never stopped.
You would think that you would get a little inured to it. I didn't. I still thought it was revolting every single time it cut to it. So it worked.
Which is funny because it's really not about it. In that case, it's not about the body as far as the trap goes. Because usually the trap is something to do with, I mean, granted, the guy is drowning in pig guts.
Drowning.
that's so different than like we're gonna twist your arms, we're gonna connect this into the rib cage, we're gonna
That's true.
have a bunch of needles poke you. It's just it's a bunch of pig juice. Oh, disgusting.
Do you have a prediction? I feel like we can kind of start doing this a little bit with the Saw movies, only for part 4. And the only reason that occurs to me is like, what's in the folder that says Amanda? What's the tape with the wax? Like, I'm sure there's other stuff that I've completely forgot about, but I have a feeling that how is it going to fold back on itself?
Yeah.
And move forward.
I think that tape is probably for someone that we haven't met yet, or because like I said, I know Costas Mandalore as Detective Hoffman is in it more. So maybe for him, get him involved, bring the cops back in. As far as the file folder, I'm just assuming it's there was that Justice League comic book storyline where like it turned out Batman has dossiers on everybody, all the other Justice League members, and how to kill them, and like it gets out. OMAC gets it or whatever. Then it's her like finding out that it's going to be like revealed that Jigsaw like had her number, and that she like found out that he was that what she thought was care and love was like this other test, and that might retroactively give her some more motivation for doing what she did. Right. That's my guess anyway.
I have a feeling that if there's one Amanda, and this is extremely lazy, so this is purely like a guess, lowest common denominator type of thing. If he's trained Amanda, he will have trained like multiple other people. So it'd be like, well, guess what? I was also training another guy over here that will follow, and maybe
you have to, because I mean, he's like, I'm sick and dying of cancer. Everything that happens at this point, from this point on, can't be just like only I set this up. Like, there's got to be other people.
Yeah, he needs a foot soldier. Yeah.
So I haven't seen another one of these until 6. So I'm not sure what happens next. But
I want to know.
My guess.
I'm just so curious what the wax is. Like, is that a protective covering or a protective coating for something? Like, does Jigsaw stash the tape somewhere? Like, does he put it up his butt before the paramedics get there?
I think it's just a way for him to be a final pain in the ass. Just you thought you could just listen to a tape? No, you've got to pointlessly dig through this stupid wax. And it's just not going to be simple with that guy.
He swallows it. He's just like, one last thing. He does a Looney Tunes, like toss it up in the air. It spins in the air, like goes down his throat.
It's the Monty Python guy with the tape recorder up his nose bit. Like, you've got to put your finger in Jigsaw's nose to play it.
Oh, yes.
Comes out of his ears.
Absolutely. So thanks for everyone for joining us and watching along. We really like it when everybody mentions that they're watching with us. I just wanted to shout out Maxine Frank, who we've been talking to on Instagram, as well as Gina, who I think she suggested that we do Saw, I think a couple of franchises ago. So Gina, it's your fault I watched pig guts get sprayed all over a man, and I'm going to remember that.
Yeah. Hey, Gina, thanks. Thanks so much. No, seriously, hey, thank you.
No, really.
I enjoyed watching a guy getting sprayed with pig guts. So, hell yeah, Gina. That's becoming a really fun part. And if we forget to mention you, it's only because I'm terrible at social media, or I find myself at this juncture of my life wanting to use social media as little as possible. And then what I do, start 2 podcasts that I have to start using social media for to get the word out about. But we definitely appreciate that is the golden side of social media these days, working on the podcast stuff. So love hearing from people.
The positive.
And
absolutely.
Let us know what your favorite trap is.
And how it could be anything but pig guts. John, anything you want to plug before we get out of here?
Yes, the podcast I always plug. John and Alex Hate Stuff. If you want to hear me talk about movies, we just did The Master. This watch I think might have pushed it to be my favorite Paul Thomas Anderson movie.
Okay.
I'm not sure. It might just be a recency bias, but man, I really liked it. But yeah, you can hear me talk about that there at John and Alex Hate Stuff. John with an H, Alex with 2 X's, wherever you can get podcasts.
Yeah. And if you like original short horror stories, please check out Please Leave podcast. And here's some original spooky stories, mainly written by my business partner, Courtney Eck. She and I are actually going to the Overlook Film Festival in a couple of days. So this might actually be coming out after it's over. But if you retroactively are going to be there, let me know. I'll buy you a beer. I won't have to buy them a beer because this will come out after the film festival.
You are the Jigsaw of this podcast. Yeah, you thought about this ahead of time.
So definitely let me know when this comes out. I believe like sometime early April. If you will be at the Overlook Film Festival on March 30th.
You could also post it on social media. But
nah,
I'll post on social media. I'll blow up your whole plan. I'll be your Amanda.
Right?
I don't believe in your philosophy about not buying them a beer. The thing. I'm a psychopath.
And his first weapon is social media, which is my kryptonite. So God,
yeah.
We're getting there. No, but seriously, thanks everybody for listening along. Check out those other shows. And yes, if you're at the Overlook Film Festival on the 30th through the 2nd, come say hi. And we will see you for Saw 4 next time.
Good night.
Good night. This has been a Two Penguins media production. It was produced by James Strayer and edited by John C. Myers. Logo by Ethan Kimberling and music by Michael Arthur Holloway, who you can find on Bandcamp. Follow us on Instagram at This May Hurt a Bit Pod and on Twitter at Hurt a Bit. Email us at thismayhurtabit@gmail.com. And if you are so inclined, rate and review us on your favorite podcast app, and we'll see you next time.